Alright, Chapter 17, from the Book of Fairy Tales, The Mystery of the Servants. To our delight, the castle was in a panic. We couldn't have been more pleased. Everything was going according to our plan. Gaston had been in the servants' hall when Lumiere came bounding downstairs to give them the news. The prince had been attacked. Gaston had just been consoling Mrs. Potts because Mr. Cogsworth had been missing all day, and she was in a heap of tears. He suggested she have her tea with Nanny to try to get her mind off things, suggesting also having Chip search the castle for Mr. Cogsworth. But Gaston feared they wouldn't find him. They hadn't found any of the servants who had disappeared, only the strange statues that seemed to be appearing in odd places around the castle. Statues that you would swear you saw moving out of the corner of your eye, and when you turn around, their position had changed. It was no wonder Kingsley was losing his wits. Everyone was afraid, including Gaston, who knew this was due to the curse. They didn't stop it. If they didn't stop it, everyone within the castle would turn into these wretched statues. The only thing that gave Gaston hope was that the prince finally believed that Princess Tulip loved him, and they were at that very moment in the garden, where the prince planned to give her the kiss that would break this curse. At least, that is what Gaston thought, until Lumiere came downstairs in a state of fear and dismay. "Gaston, the prince was attacked!" Lumiere was out of breath, having run all the way. "Where's Francis? Someone needs to fetch the doctor." "I haven't seen Francis all day. And what do you mean attacked? By who?" Gaston stood from the table and went straight to his blunderbuss, propped up in the corner of the room. This was the last thing they needed. Cogsworth was missing, and now an attack? He felt like he was going mad. Some sort of beast in the hedge maze. "I don't know, but don't go running after it and disappearing on me as well." Gaston had never seen Lumiere so frazzled. "Then what do you suppose I do, Lumiere?" "I don't know. See to the prince? He is in rare form. He's angry and insisting we find Cogsworth, and I have a feeling his surprise for Tulip didn't turn out as he would have liked," he said. "I should think not. He was attacked." "No, there's something else. He was being very impatient with her. I don't think things went as planned." Gaston sighed. "For goodness sake," he said as Nanny came padding down the stairs. What she was doing down there he didn't know, but he didn't have time for this. "Can we help you, Nanny?" he asked, trying to be calm. It wasn't her fault the castle was falling down around them, and soon everyone would succumb to the curse. He had to try to play it off. The last thing he needed was Tulip's Nanny getting into a fit. "I'm sorry to bother you, gentlemen, but have you seen Mrs. Potts?" she asked. "No, we thought she was with you." Gaston felt his stomach and chest tighten. Was Mrs. Potts missing now? What would they do without Mrs. Potts? This was too much. He was struggling to breathe. It was all he could do to maintain his composure. But what he wanted to do in that moment was pick up the closest thing and hurl it against the wall. "She was with me, but I slipped away just for a moment to get us more hot water for our tea. And when I came back, she wasn't there. It's the strangest thing. She was just gone, but in her place was a teapot." "A teapot? Not a statue?" asked Gaston. "A statue? What do you mean?" "What in the many kingdoms do you mean, a statue?" "It was a teapot that hadn't been there before." "I mean a statue, woman. Haven't you seen them? They're everywhere." Gaston could see she didn't know what he was talking about. Gaston felt the anger and panic within him rising. Kingsley must have done something horrible to Tulip. It was becoming clear that every time he did something nasty, someone they loved disappeared. Did he see it too? Gaston didn't know what to do. He and Lumiere just stood there, looking at each other, not saying a word, overcome by fear. "What's going on?" Nanny asked, eyeing them both with suspicion. "Something is going on. I may be an old woman, but I can tell when something foul is afoot." Thankfully, Lumiere jumped in and took over. "It's nothing. Nothing to trouble you with anyway. Go upstairs to see to Tulip. I dare say she needs you just now. There was some sort of mishap in the garden, and I need to call the doctor to look at the prince." Call the doctor. Is Tulip all right? She's fine, but in need of consoling, I fear, said Lumiere with a weak smile. Mark my words. Something's not right here. I feel it in my bones. This castle is cursed, I tell you, and I am going to tell Tulip we should leave at once. Nanny padded away and went quickly up the stairs, but not before turning back to give Gaston and Lumiere a seething look. I guess it's just down to us then, Gaston said. I'll fetch the doctor. You go console Tulip and her nanny. Gaston took care of the prince while Lumiere looked after Tulip and Nanny. Despite the evidence against this likelihood, Gaston hoped once Kingsley recovered, they would start making plans for the wedding. Maybe Kingsley had broken the curse by kissing Tulip in the garden before the attack. Perhaps it wouldn't be long until they started to see evidence of the curse reversing. Maybe Kingsley hadn't messed things up. So Gaston sat at Kingsley's bedside and watched as he slept fretfully, tossing and turning, muttering in his sleep about curses, kisses, and witches. He held his friend's hand and assured him Lumiere would not let Tulip leave the castle until they were certain the curse was broken. Meanwhile, Tulip and Nanny wondered what could have become of Mrs. Potts and Mr. Cogsworth. Lumiere did his best to try to hide that most of the servants had already disappeared before Tulip's recent arrival to the castle. But there was no hiding this. There was no hiding that Mrs. Potts and Mr. Cogsworth were gone. Lumiere had his hands full trying to make things look as if they weren't in the middle of a crisis, especially with Nanny trying to talk Tulip into leaving. I assure you, ladies, the prince is resting comfortably. The doctor just left, and Gaston is with him now. There is no need to fret, or to go rushing off into the night. Dinner will be served in the dining hall at the usual time. You needn't fuss over us this evening, Lumiere. You can just bring us something on a tray. We can eat in our rooms, or perhaps next to the fire in the sitting room. I am sure everyone is in a tizzy downstairs with Mrs. Potts and Cogsworth missing. I don't want you worrying about us, Tulip said, but the flirty Frenchman wouldn't hear of serving guests on trays in the sitting room, or any other room, for that matter. Oh, no, that will not do. If Mrs. Potts were here, she would blow her lid at the thought of you two eating off trays. And as for the menu this evening, never fear, we have something special planned for you, he said with his magical grin that always charmed the ladies. Later that night in the main dining hall, you would have never known almost the entire household staff was missing, let alone two of the most important figures. The room was lovely, decorated with the hothouse flowers from Tulip's earlier surprise, and the candles were sparkling brightly in crystal votive bowls, casting an unearthly light. The two ladies were enjoying their dessert when the prince stumbled into the room, looking haggard and half-crazed. I'm happy you ladies are savoring your meal while the household is falling to shambles around you. He appeared as if he had aged several years since earlier that afternoon. He looked exhausted and unwell, with a wild look in his eye. Nanny and Tulip didn't know what to say. They just stared at him, at a complete loss. Have you nothing to say for yourself, Tulip? Sitting here stuffing yourself while my childhood companions are suffering such a terrible fate? His face turned into something inhuman, something wicked and cruel, making both women recoil in fear. Don't you look at me like that, old woman. I won't have you casting the evil eye at me. And you, he turned his anger on Tulip. You lying scrumpet, playing with my emotions, pretending you love me when clearly you do not. Tulip gasped and melted into tears at once, hardly able to speak. That's not true. I do love you. The prince's face was ashen, his eyes sunken and dark with illness, his anger growing with every word. If you loved me, truly loved me, then none of this would be happening. Mrs. Potts and Cogsworth would be here. The animals in the maze wouldn't have attacked me, and I wouldn't like this, or look like this. Look at me. Every day I grow uglier, more wretched. Nanny put a protective arm around Tulip. The princess was crying so hard she could hardly breathe properly, let alone say anything in her own defense. I can't stand the sight of you. I want you out of the castle this moment. Don't bother packing your things. He rushed toward them, grabbed Tulip by the hair, and violently dragged her to the door, knocking Nanny over in the process. I won't have you in this castle for one more moment. Do you understand? You disgust me, he said, spitting at her. Tulip cried harder than ever, screaming for the prince to let go when Gaston came into the room. What on earth is going on here, man? Gaston wrenched Tulip from the prince's clutches and then helped Nanny to her feet. What are you playing at, sir? Are you deranged? Gaston had never been so angry with Kingsley, not since the night his father died. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Had he somehow never truly seen who Kingsley was before, or had the strain of the curse pushed him to this? Either way, it was all Gaston could do not to strike the prince right then and there, seeing him manhandle a woman in this way. It was vile and beneath contempt. Quickly go to your rooms, ladies. I will take care of this, Gaston said, leading the two women to the door, where Lumiere met them. Lumiere, see to Nanny, and take her and the princess upstairs. The moment Lumiere closed the door behind them, Gaston punched the prince in the face, hitting him across the jaw and knocking him to the floor. What in blazes is going on? Gaston was looming over the prince, his face full of fury. He longed to kick him in the stomach, but stopped himself. How dare you lay your hands on Tulip like that? Gaston was ready to leave the castle and his friend for good. He expected Kingsley to get up and defend himself, to rail at him for striking him, to throw him out of the castle, but he just wept. She lied to me, Gaston. She didn't love me. She never did. Gaston was shocked by how changed his friend was. He didn't look entirely human, but Gaston could sense there was still something of his old friend lurking behind his hideous form and angry heart. What are you talking about, man? She did love you. Then why isn't the curse broken? Why have all the servants been turned to stone? Why was I attacked by the animals in the hedge maze? Perhaps it's because you don't love her? It's not her fault, Kingsley. She doesn't deserve this. And I do, Kingsley said, his face transforming into something monstrous. His voice grew deep and growling. It sounded more like a wild animal than a man's voice. I deserve to be turned into a monster? I deserve to be cursed? This is your fault. I blame you. You're the one who pushed me into that dimwit's arms. Now you deal with it. Kingsley's voice was as loud as thunder, and he looked as if he was going to strike at any moment. Get those women out of the castle before I kill them, and don't bother coming back. Gaston shut his eyes against his friend's snarling face. He had no intention of going anywhere. Kingsley needed him. He had never seen such rage, such bitterness. He was afraid for his friend and for them all. How could Kingsley come to love anyone such as he was? And who would love such a beast?